Have you ever sat in silence, staring at your phone, convinced that the moment you stop texting, calling, or chasing, they'll feel your absence so deeply, they'll come running back, that somehow your silence will scream louder than your words ever could? It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That no contact will magically flip a switch in their heart. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. No contact is not a spell. It's not some reverse psychology trick that guarantees they'll miss you. And thinking it is can be the very reason you stay stuck. A lot of people hear about no contact and instantly cling to it like it's the holy grail of healing or reconciliation. But the danger lies in misunderstanding it. No contact is not a shortcut to get them back. It's a boundary, a tool for you, not a trap for them. It's supposed to help you regain clarity, emotional stability, and strength. Yet, when it's used as a game, something to win, it stops being a tool of growth and becomes a strategy of manipulation. And manipulation rarely works the way we hope it will. Think about it. You cut off communication, expecting them to spiral in your absence, to suddenly realize your worth, to chase you like a scene out of a romantic movie. But what if they don't? What if your silence doesn't echo in their world the way it does in yours? What if they interpret your absence not as a test, but as a decision? This is where no contact backfires. Because when it's done from a place of ego, when it's used as a tactic to regain power instead of regain peace, it becomes toxic. You may convince yourself you're healing, but really, you're sitting in silence waiting for a response that may never come. And every day they don't call, don't text, don't notice, you spiral deeper. Not everyone will respond to your absence. Some people are emotionally disconnected, already detached, or simply don't value the connection the way you did. That's not your failure, it's just your reality. No contact doesn't fail because you did something wrong. It fails because you were expecting it to fix someone else. And here's where the truth cuts deep. No contact only works when the other person still cares. If they've mentally moved on, if they've emotionally checked out, your silence won't disturb them. It might even confirm their decision. That's why it's dangerous to use silence as a test. You can't trick someone into caring. You can't force regret. And you definitely can't make someone miss you if their heart has already made peace with losing you. So no contact should never be about making them realize your value. It should be about you realizing your own. If they come back, fine. If they don't, you didn't waste your time trying to play games. You spent it healing, growing, rebuilding the parts of yourself you lost, trying to keep someone who wasn't meant to stay. Let that silence be your sanctuary, not your strategy. Have you ever gone completely silent on someone, thinking that somehow the silence would speak louder than all the pain you endured? That maybe, just maybe, your absence would explain everything your voice couldn't? That by disappearing, they'd finally get it? Here's the hard truth. What you don't say doesn't always say what you want it to. And silence, when misused, doesn't heal brokenness, it buries it. We often use no contact like a mic drop, a dramatic exit, hoping it leaves behind a powerful echo. But here's the problem. What if the other person never even understood what went wrong? What if you left in silence after a storm of arguments, confusion, or emotional wreckage, thinking that the quiet would clarify it all for them? What if they're not connecting the dots because they were never given the full picture? People don't always reflect the way we want them to. Some don't have the emotional tools, the depth, or the willingness to unravel what went wrong. So when you walk away without explaining, without expressing, without releasing the truth, they don't reflect, they just move on. And then you're left feeling even more invisible. Silence is powerful, yes, but it's not a cure. It doesn't mend misunderstandings. It doesn't untangle emotional knots. It doesn't replace closure. Because the things that go unspoken don't vanish. They linger, they fester in the heart, becoming silent regrets, unanswered questions, and unfinished chapters. And when we avoid having the hard conversations, we often lie to ourselves that going no contact is healing. But in reality, it can be avoidance in disguise. Instead of sitting in the discomfort and confronting what broke, we ghost it, we escape. We think that if we're just gone, everything will resolve itself. But healing doesn't happen in absence. It happens in understanding, in accountability, in truth, and you can't heal what you don't face. The silence you're using to punish them might be the same silence that prevents you from ever truly moving on. Because deep down, you know there's unfinished business. Words that should have been said, feelings that were never validated, pain that was never acknowledged. You can delete every message thread, block every number, and call it growth, but if your heart is still carrying unsaid truths, then you haven't healed. You've just gone quiet. And here's the most heartbreaking part. Sometimes the person you're being silent with wants to understand, but they can't read your mind. They don't know the depth of your hurt unless you speak it. Your silence doesn't teach them a lesson. It just leaves them confused. Or worse, it confirms their belief that they weren't important enough to deserve a real goodbye. So if you're going to walk away, let it be with truth, not silence. Let it be with clarity, not confusion. Let it be with strength, not spite. Because you can't use silence to solve what words never healed. Have you ever gone silent, hoping they'd chase you, only to be met with complete indifference? No text, no call, not even a second glance? And suddenly that silence you thought would trigger a wave of regret turns into a brutal realization? They don't seem to care. That's the moment the illusion of no contact comes crashing down. Because here's what no one tells you. No contact doesn't work on everyone, especially not on the emotionally unavailable. We're told silence creates mystery, that it builds curiosity, that it stirs longing. But what happens when you're dealing with someone who's trained themselves not to feel? Someone who views emotional detachment as strength, the kind of person who shuts down instead of opening up, who runs from intimacy, who feels safer in distance than in closeness. When you go no contact with someone like that, you're not creating tension. You're giving them exactly what they're used to, space. And to them, space doesn't feel like punishment, it feels like peace. The emotionally detached people don't respond to emotional cues the way most of us do. When you stop reaching out, you think you're making a statement, you think you're taking control, but in their mind, they're not interpreting it as loss, they're interpreting it as relief, because disconnection is their default. Your silence isn't shaking their world, it's feeding their comfort zone. This is why so many people are left confused during no contact. Why haven't they reached out? Why don't they miss me? Why aren't they fighting for me? It's because the part of them that should be emotionally triggered is either numb, buried, or never fully developed in the first place. You're expecting a reaction from someone who may not even know how to process emotional loss in a healthy way. And this isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Not everyone grew up learning how to connect, how to feel deeply, how to attach securely. Some people developed avoidance as a survival mechanism. They pull away when things get intense. They shut down when they're confronted. They escape into silence when intimacy feels overwhelming. So when you go no contact, they don't perceive it as an invitation to reflect. They see it as an exit, a door closed. And they don't chase doors that close. This is the cruel twist. While you're sitting in silence, hoping they'll come running, they're just adapting. You're missing them, they're moving on. You're aching, they're detaching. And the more time passes, the more you start to realize that your silence isn't being met with curiosity, it's being met with indifference. So what does that mean for you? It means you need to stop using no contact as a fishing line for attention from someone who lacks the depth to feel your absence. It means recognizing when your silence is being used in a game and when it's becoming a mirror, reflecting the truth about who they are and what they're capable of emotionally. You cannot fix an emotionally unavailable person with silence. You cannot make someone chase you if they're afraid of closeness in the first place. No contact won't melt walls they've spent a lifetime building, and waiting for them to feel your absence might only extend your pain. Sometimes no contact doesn't bring them back because emotionally they were never really with you to begin with. Let me ask you something real. When you say you're doing no contact, are you actually letting go or are you just pretending to? Because there's a difference, a big one. Some people go silent on the outside, but inside they're still in it. Still checking the phone every hour, still watching their stories from a fake account, still hoping, wishing, aching. And that's not no contact, that's self-deception. It's easy to block someone and say, I'm done. But what's really going on behind the scenes? Are you emotionally detached? Or are you just hiding behind silence, waiting for a reaction? Waiting for them to notice you're gone? Waiting for them to care? That's the dangerous game we play when we use no contact as a mask instead of a movement. Real no contact isn't about ghosting someone while still obsessing over them. It's not about walking away physically while dragging the emotional weight with you. You might have stopped talking to them, but if they still live rent-free in your mind every day, if your mood depends on whether they viewed your story, if your heart races every time your phone lights up, then you haven't let go, you've just gone quiet. And here's where the emotional damage deepens. When you pretend you're detached, but you're secretly waiting, every day they don't reach out feels like rejection. Every silence becomes a wound, and before you know it, you've built your entire healing process around their response, or lack of it. But let's call it for what it is. That's not healing, that's obsession, that's emotional bondage. You're stuck not because they won't come back, but because you haven't truly decided to move forward. You're trying to use silence as a signal, as bait, as a test. But healing is never about what the other person does. It's about what you decide to do with your emotions, your energy, your peace. And that's the problem. When you go into no contact still emotionally attached, you're not freeing yourself, you're just prolonging the agony. It becomes a cycle, one where you keep expecting them to make the next move so you can finally breathe, so you can finally tell yourself you mattered. But you'll never feel free if your healing is dependent on their attention. True emotional detachment doesn't start with blocking them. It starts with being honest with yourself. Do you still want them? Are you still clinging to the fantasy of how things could have been? Are you still romanticizing what was, while ignoring all the reasons it didn't work? Because the truth is, no contact only becomes powerful when it's backed by clarity, when you're not using it to punish or test or manipulate, but when you use it to rebuild, to reflect, to rediscover yourself, to ask the hard questions and sit with the uncomfortable answers. If you're still emotionally attached, no contact is not your healing journey, it's your waiting room. And the only way to leave that space is to stop hoping they'll walk back in and start focusing on why you needed to leave in the first place. The silence isn't for them to miss you, it's for you to remember yourself. How many times have you heard the phrase, just give it time? As if time alone can erase betrayal, disappointment, heartbreak. As if silence plus a calendar equals healing. But here's the part no one talks about. Time doesn't heal what you refuse to confront. It doesn't fix wounds you've ignored. It doesn't replace reflection, accountability, or growth. Time only passes. What you do with it is what determines whether you heal or just become good at pretending. You can be 30 days, 60 days, even a year into no contact and still be exactly where you were emotionally on day one, if you're not willing to do the work. Because healing isn't about waiting. It's about working. And yet so many people treat no contact like it's a countdown clock, like if they can just stay silent long enough, they'll automatically be free of the pain. But silence without self-reflection is just avoidance in disguise. You might look like you've moved on from the outside, posting, smiling, living, but inside, if you're still bitter, still triggered, still checking for updates on their life, then nothing has actually changed. You've just let the days pass. And unprocessed pain doesn't dissolve with time, it hardens. It becomes baggage. It shows up in your next relationship. It warps your perception of love. It convinces you that shutting down is safer than opening up. There are people who've been in no contact for months and still fantasize daily about revenge or reconciliation or validation. And it's not because they're weak. It's because they never sat down and asked themselves the deeper questions. What did that relationship reveal about me? What patterns did I ignore? What part of me chose them in the first place, and why? No contact can create space, yes, but space without reflection is empty. It's a void you'll keep trying to fill with distractions, rebounds, social media stalking, or forced confidence. The truth is, time only helps when it's paired with intentional healing. When you cry, write, pray, scream, reflect, admit, forgive, and let go, not just of the person, but of the version of yourself that tolerated things you never deserved. People say healing takes time, and it does, but it also takes truth, brutal, unfiltered, gut-wrenching truth. You have to be willing to face the reality of what the relationship was and what it wasn't. You have to stop romanticizing the moments and start remembering the patterns. Stop fantasizing about who they could have been and start accepting who they actually were. Otherwise, time becomes a trap. You'll keep marking the days, expecting to feel lighter, but wondering why your heart still feels heavy. It's because healing doesn't live in silence. It lives in truth, in accountability, in choosing every day to detach not just from them, but from the illusion that they ever held the key to your worth. So if you're in no contact, don't just wait, work. Don't just count days, make those days count. Journal your triggers, acknowledge your patterns, release the blame both for them and for yourself. This isn't about forgetting them, it's about remembering you. Time doesn't heal what you're still holding onto in the dark. Have you ever gone no contact with someone secretly hoping they'd panic without you? That the silence would hit them like a wave and make them realize just how much you meant? So you waited, day after day, checking your phone, watching their socials, rehearsing the moment they'd finally come back with an apology. But then, nothing happened. No message, no call, just quiet. And that silence? It didn't bring closure. It brought heartbreak. Because here's the truth nobody prepares you for. Sometimes, no contact backfires. Not because you did it wrong, but because it reveals something you weren't ready to face. Maybe you never really mattered to them the way you thought you did. That's a hard pill to swallow, you see. People often talk about no contact like it's a power move, a way to get the upper hand. Go silent, they'll miss you. Cut them off, they'll come back. But what happens when they don't? What happens when the very silence you hoped would haunt them only confirms their indifference? You expected them to chase, to reflect, to regret, but they don't. And the absence that was supposed to wake them up, it doesn't even rattle them. Why? Because the brutal reality is this: some people aren't emotionally invested enough to be affected by your absence, and when that becomes clear, it cuts deeper than any words they ever said. You gave so much, you fought, you forgave, you stayed when you should have walked away, and now, in your silence, you're still giving, hoping they'll finally see what they lost. But they won't. Not because you weren't valuable, not because you weren't enough, but because they were never capable of seeing your worth in the first place. The truth is, no contact doesn't always lead to reconciliation. Sometimes it leads to realization, and not the kind you were hoping for. Not the "they realized I'm the one" kind, but the "I realized I was the only one trying" kind. And that truth hurts, but it also sets you free. Because the moment you understand that your silence didn't shake them, it liberates you from needing their validation. You start to see that the pain wasn't in losing them, it was in holding on to the hope that they cared enough to come back. And once that hope dies, something stronger is born in its place: acceptance. You stop wondering if they'll text. You stop analyzing what they're doing or who they're with. You stop needing to be missed. Because you realize the person who needed your love the most was you. You needed your own energy, your own time, your own compassion. And the silence that once felt like rejection becomes the very space where you begin to heal. Yes, sometimes no contact doesn't work the way you wanted it to. But maybe it worked exactly the way it was supposed to. Not to bring them back, but to bring you back to yourself. That's the kind of closure they were never going to give you.